The Prime Minister is on his way to Singapore to secure future fuel supplies during a meeting with Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. Singapore is one of Australia's biggest suppliers of unleaded petrol and refines a significant amount of our liquid natural gas exports. The relationship with our major fuel suppliers has become more critical due to the war in the Middle East and the uncertainty surrounding ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz.
If the ceasefire holds, that doesn't mean that the world global capacity comes online in a week or a month. It will take a considerable period of time.
We'll have a breakdown of where Australia gets its fuel from shortly, but first let's look at how things stand domestically. Fuel producers and wholesalers report their supply levels to the government, and that data is released weekly. The latest figures show Australia has 855 million litres of petrol. That's enough to last about 39 days at normal consumption levels. There are almost 2.2 billion litres of diesel, about 29 days worth. And there are 663 million litres of kerosene, mostly used in aviation. That will last about 30 days. Suppliers are required to hold certain stock levels in what's called the minimum stockholding obligation to ensure Australia doesn't run out of fuel. Petrol and kerosene importers have to hold 27 days of supply. It's 32 days for diesel. Those obligations are slightly lower for local fuel producers at Australia's 2 remaining refineries. The latest numbers show all types of fuel are currently above the minimum requirement levels.
Australians can be reassured, I think, that that means that petrol and diesel is going out the door at a rapid rate, but also coming in the door. I've been in constant contact with the fuel companies. I can confirm there continues to be no cancellations of expected deliveries into Australia, and they now have secure contracted supply well into May.
Around 2 decades ago, there were 8 refineries in Australia, enough to supply most of the country's demands. But over time, 6 were deemed economically unviable due to their inability to compete with bigger facilities overseas, which are capable of producing higher volumes at lower prices. That left just Ampol's refinery in Brisbane and Viva Energy's refinery in Geelong. They both rely on government support to remain operational. Before the outbreak of the Middle East war, they were both in talks to extend the government's financial support beyond 2027. Together, the Ampol and Viva Energy facilities produce about 20% of our fuel requirements, while the remaining 80% is imported, already refined. The vast majority of our fuel imports come from Asian countries, led by South Korea, Singapore, India, Taiwan and Malaysia. But those countries don't produce much of their own crude oil, and some don't have any of their own oil reserves. Around 60 to 70% of crude oil refined in Asia comes from the Middle East, and most of that has to travel through the Strait of Hormuz. Let's take a look at Singapore. It was our biggest importer of oil, refined oil, in January, sending a total of 928 million litres to our shores. The island state is one of Asia's biggest fuel producers, but it has no crude oil of its own and has cut production since the beginning of the war and the closure of the strait. Australia and Singapore have signed an agreement to continue the trade of fuels, and the government says it also has assurances from other Asian countries. Once refined and loaded onto tankers, it takes between 10 and 20 days to get here. Earlier this week, Energy Minister Chris Bowen assured the public there was enough fuel to last well into May, with shipment contracts locked in. And the country's stockpiles have remained relatively consistent throughout the war. But with the latest developments in the Middle East, there is still uncertainty about the global flow of oil.
Clearly, we have an interest in the Straits of Hormuz being open. I mean, that's utterly self-evident in terms of the disruption that's being experienced to the global fuel supply chain by virtue of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz and its impact on the region, the world, but very much Australia. So we have an interest in seeing the Straits of Hormuz open. We will be talking with our partners, particularly the UK and France, about how we can contribute.